Hello everyone and welcome to today's Leaders Live. My name is Cllr Millie Earl. I'm the leader of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, and I'm joined today by quite a few guests as we have a number of topics to discuss. So first I'm going to have Councillor Rich Herit, who is our portfolio holder at BCP Council for Destination, Leisure and Commercial Operations, and I'm also going to be joined by Dorset Police Assistant Chief Constable Mark Callahan. We're going to spend some time talking about prepping for the summer season in BCP and answer any questions you may have about the summer or anything else that you might want to ask for the first 30 minutes or so. And then we're going to show a video about the community governance review, which has been made with Councillor Andy Martin, who is a parish councillor in Highcliffe. And then I'll be joined by the Head of Democratic Services for BCP Council, Richard Jones, and we'll be answering questions on the community governance review. So to start with, summer readiness. We are so lucky to live where we live, and having grown up here, the beach has played a huge part in my life as somewhere to enjoy really quality time, and I think others would agree who live here. However, there is a lot of work that goes on behind the background to try and manage the amount of beach that we have, and of course the 13 million or so visitors a year that come here to our beaches. We actually have 15 miles of coastline, and of course a lot of that is glorious sand, golden sand, and it does take a lot to keep that looking really good and keeping it safe as well for residents and visitors. We do ask that residents who come here respect our place and that they protect our really precious environment here. But also we want people to enjoy what our area has to offer, and we want them to come and visit our area and spend their money here and contribute to our local economy. We have a whole seafront team who are really experienced in managing the thousands of visitors we have in sunny weather, and it's very much business as usual for us as a council. But sadly, around 2,000 tonnes of litter is left on the beach each year, and you probably don't see them, but very early in the morning we have tractors out, we have litter pickers and staff who rake up the litter and leave our beaches pristine for the next day. We also have large beaches along our seafront which are emptied every day, and to try and reduce people from littering in the future, we also have an enforcement team which are the Waste Investigation Support and Enforcement, which I sometimes call WISE, and they work to prevent littering across our coastline. They actually do that by issuing fixed penalty notices to people who are caught littering, and last year hundreds were issued across our beaches. And I also just wanted to mention that we have a Public Spaces Protection Order, a PSPO, which is in place across our seafront, which allows us to work with partners to take action on behaviours that never negatively impact our local communities, such as lighting open fires, antisocial behaviour, and the PSPO is designed to ensure that everyone can enjoy the beach space and that it's safe from some of those behaviours. So I'm going to invite Councillor Rich Herrett, who's going to tell us a little bit more about what he covers in his portfolio and basically more about how we run the seafront. Rich.
Thanks, Millie. I couldn't agree more that we're really lucky to live where we do. I moved down to the area from Sheffield just over 10 years ago, and while Sheffield has got some amazing green places nearby, I don't think anything really competes with that sea view and those beaches that we've got. So of those beaches, 9 beaches across the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole have been awarded blue flag status for another year, and it's a really great example of where we now have to work in partnership with other organisations, with Destination Management Board helping get sponsorship for those blue flags this year and last, and that's from home move organisations to beachfront hospitality, and they've helped keep our area achieving those symbols at the standard of our seafront. And they're awarded for cleanliness, safety, environmental management and environmental education. Obviously safety is a really key part of that, and we have 15 RNLI lifeguarded beaches along our seafront, with lifeguards on duty daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the summer months. They designate bathing areas and they're marked out on the beaches using the RNLI's red and yellow flags, and I would encourage everyone to please swim in those areas, follow their water safety advice, including the very useful Float to Live water safety campaign. There's a great web page with a video that I'm sure we can link to for people to go and have a look at as well. Alongside our beautiful beaches, we've also got some great schemes and facilities, including toy libraries, so that you can recycle and reuse beach toys. You don't have to go totally laden to the beach with a million different toys for your children. There's 150 places along the seafront to refill water bottles to help keep visitors hydrated without resorting to single-use plastic. And our seafront rangers are out and about helping visitors and residents with information, advice, and to get help if they need it. And one of the best schemes that we have is the partnership with LV for Kids Zone, which is a beach safety scheme which helps protect and reunites lost children and vulnerable adults during the summer months. And since that initiative began in 2007, the Kids Zone team have distributed nearly 1 million wristbands and reunited over 3,000 lost children and vulnerable adults with their parents or guardians.
Thank you, Rich. Hello, Mark, Assistant Chief Constable Mark Callahan. I would like to invite you if you have anything to add from the police perspective, please.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for inviting me today. So, as Millie said, Mark Callahan, I'm the Assistant Chief Constable for one of two in Dorset Police. I'm responsible for local policing, crime and criminal justice, and I work with strategic partnerships. And I think it's important just to really focus on some of the things we're doing, and everything we do. We have a really strong partnership with BCP in our delivery, as we do with County as well. But some of the sort of highlights of some of the work that we're doing. So Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, does remain a really safe place in which to live, work and visit. However, just like any large urban area, we do have crime and antisocial behaviour, which we are tackling and reducing, and we are committed to that. We can expect, over the summer period, it comes around every year, we're well prepared. You'll see increased patrols from uniformed officers at key locations throughout the county, ready to respond to the demand from those higher visitor numbers. We also deploy officers in plain clothes as well to target some of that criminality that we see, so it doesn't disrupt members of the public going about their lawful business, wanting to enjoy the area. We do recognise, in particular, Bournemouth Beach has become a real focal point for some people, and we've introduced a beach beat last year, and we've continued it this year, which dedicates police officers on the seafront throughout the summer, working with our partners to tackle any criminality, antisocial behaviour. In the evenings, we see a really vibrant nighttime economy, and we have visible patrols, both in uniform and plain clothes as well, who are focused on preventing violence and things like sexual harm. So real focus on preventing any sort of predatory offending that we may see. I'm really pleased to see that's very low in numbers in Dorset and BCP, but we do commit those resources to making sure that it's a safe place for everybody, and particularly any of those that may be vulnerable. During the daytime in the town centres, not just in Bournemouth Central, but much wider in other areas of our towns, we're focusing on shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, drugs and street crimes across the area, with a clear focus on prevention, early intervention and targeting repeat offenders in locations, and that's delivered through our neighbourhood teams and our operational support teams. So from me, I would really encourage people who live in Dorset and those who come and visit Dorset, and particularly obviously for this event, BCP, and enjoy what Dorset has to offer. Look after yourself, look after our towns. But please, let me be clear that if people are intent on causing antisocial behaviour or committing crime, we won't hesitate to deal with people swiftly and robustly, which may result in people being arrested and put before the courts with stringent conditions to stay away from the area they committed the crime or face further arrest. This is what we believe the law-abiding public enjoying our towns would expect from us. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't tolerate any behaviours and be really clear not to act in that way in the town, so people can enjoy the spaces we have. And finally, our officers and staff work in really challenging circumstances to deliver the best possible service they can. But the busy summer does stretch public services. But I want to reassure you that we have really good joined up partnership plans in place to focus on the areas we expect to see increased demand. So for me, please do say hello to our officers if you see them out and about, and they'll be happy to engage with you and tell you more of what we're doing. Thanks, Millie.
Thank you, Mark. Right, so we're going to go to our questions on summer readiness here in BCP. Mark, I actually have one for you first, which is from Darren Dibben on Facebook, who has said, I think we need a monthly update of how many stabbings that have occurred in the Bournemouth area on a rolling basis. you should be ashamed as to what you have let the area become. So obviously knife crime is something that we hear about quite often. A lot of people are very worried about it. And Mark, I wondered if you had anything you could say about how the police deal with knife crime.
Yeah, absolutely. So whilst Dorset does, doesn't have the extent of knife crime that you might see in some other areas, so big metropolitan areas of the country, we're not complacent, and we do remain really committed to doing all we can to tackle, a really important issue for us. However, knife crime does remain low in Dorset, but of course, one person carrying a knife is far too many from our perspective. Often what we see in terms of the reports that we have, we don't see in the nighttime economy, knife crime every day. Sometimes the perception on social media can be like that. But what I want to give you reassurance of is that, we have had some incidents, and some real tragic incidents over the last sort of 18 months, 12 months in relation to knife crime and people losing their lives. We have done significant work in terms of visible policing with the nighttime economy, visible policing on our beaches. We work closely with the council on a range of initiatives, which include knife crime awareness campaigns. Changes are made in supporting nationwide initiatives such as Operation Sceptre to tackle knife crime. And Dorset is one of the top 10 safest places in England and Wales. And we know that most of our young people do not carry knives. But we also know there's a younger demographic, aged 12 and over, that we need to target as part of our preventative work. And as part of that, the Community Safety Partnership is working with policing and other partners to engage with this group, educate, empower, and make sure they make positive choices not to carry knives. And training's been delivered, and it would repeat the training to thousands of students across local schools to educate them around the dangers of knife carrying. In terms of the question about where can you find the data, we actually publish the data. The Dorset crime statistics are published every 3 months by the Office for National Statistics, and Dorset Police, we regularly communicate key trends to local communities via the local media website and social media channels. So I'd encourage you to look at the ONS stats, but also look at maybe join the Facebook pages for Dorset Police, or even the Dorset Alert system. But let me be really clear. If anybody is found carrying a knife and by officers in the street, they will be arrested. They will be put before the courts, and we will be really, really robust. We don't want knife carrying in Dorset, and it's something we're not complacent about. But hopefully that helps answer the question so far.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I just want to invite people to continue putting their questions into the chat, whether you are on Facebook or you are on YouTube or however you're watching. If you write a comment, then it will come to us. If we can't answer them all today, then we'll pick them up afterwards. So the next question that I have is from Sally Harris on Facebook, who has written, to reduce the ever-increasing dog walkers onto Hengistbury Head, serious consideration needs to be given to the opening the beaches along the coastline from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. during the summer. So Rich, I think you're going to answer this one.
Yes, and I'd just like to thank Sally for the question, actually, because it's come at a really good time, because this is something we've actually already been working on in response to the large amount of people that regularly get in touch regarding dogs on beaches. And that they come from both those who'd like to have more availability and also less in some places across summer and winter. There was a significant change in dog ownership during the COVID period, and we're seeing kind of quite a lot of changes resulting from that. But it is a really complex process. There are quite a lot of factors to consider, including blue flag status, bylaws, and of course, the public's kind of feelings on it. So we'll be reviewing access for dogs on beaches and surrounding areas across the whole of our area, and we'll be considering options. I'd really like one of our scrutiny committees to do some work on it, as it is so complex. But this question's come a bit before we've kind of got to that process. So yeah, I think kind of just bear with us on that. But it is something we're aware of and working on.
Thank you, Rich. Right, so I have a question which is from Roman, who's on Facebook, who has asked, does BCP Council have any plan how to deal with Uber, who offers its services illegally in BCP? BCP without operator license across the BCP conurbation. The city and surrounding areas are now flooded with private hire vehicles licensed for Portsmouth, Southampton and the New Forest, but they are not licensed for BCP. So Roman, I agree with you. Sometimes I'm going around the conurbation and I see Portsmouth Taxi operating in our area, and it's really frustrating because we have some really good taxi drivers and license holders in our area who are being challenged by that additional market. What I would say is that it's not illegal for those taxis to work outside of the area where they're licensed, and in fact councils have no power to change or prevent it. We have private hire licensing that covers 3 types of license, so private hire drivers, private vehicles, and private hire operators. Private operators can use hackney carriage drivers and vehicles which are licensed by any local authority. So this means that BCP private hire operators like United or PRC can use hackney carriage vehicles and drivers from Dorset Council or Southampton. So they are allowed to move around. It also means that BCP hackney carriage drivers and vehicles can work for any operator in the country. So they can actually work for Uber. But you're right, Uber do not have a license here in BCP, and we haven't had an application from Uber for a license locally, although we have had discussions with them in the past about whether they want to operate here. But that's something we obviously have to consider very carefully, considering we do currently have taxi providers in our area who are licensed under our licensing scheme. Okay, so Councillor Herrett, I have another question for you, Rich, which is from Richard Lewis on Facebook. Some of the roads and pavements in BCP area are in an appalling state, primarily caused by private utility companies not repairing them back to an acceptable safe standard. Can you please either appoint an officer to ensure that the repairs are done to the required standard? And just before you come back on this, Rich, this really frustrates me because what I see around my area is when a utility company digs up the road, they'll then go and repaint lines or whatever, but only on that bit and not anywhere else. So it ends up very disjointed, and it's very frustrating when you have, a level of wear that's expected, but then just some really bold bits as well where the utility companies have filled them in. So Rich, can you answer Richard's question, please?
Yes, and so we do carry out structural condition surveys across all our roads and pavements annually or on a 4-year rota, depending on the classification of that road or pavement. The results of those are analysed and used to help form a programme of works alongside reactive maintenance records, engineer assessments, coordination with utility schemes, wider highway improvement schemes and plans for building developments as well. We actually have reasonable roads in our area and pavements. I know that kind of is sometimes hard to see, but actually compared to some of the national statistics, our officers do a really good job. So nationally 12% fall into that red category concern, but only 4% within BCP, 31% nationally amber and 23% in BCP and 57% green nationally and over 70% BCP. Although our roads and pavements are faring better than the national average, there is still a lot to do, and there is a really significant funding shortfall. Latest road condition surveys identify 270 kilometres in need of structural maintenance. And with current budget, we're able to carry out about 20% of this work each year. And we're working hard to spend the available budget in the most effective way, but it only stretches so far. And the other thing that significantly impacts pavement structure is obviously people parking vehicles on them. They're not designed for the 2 tons or more of vehicle that can often get kind of plonked on them, and that significantly increases the issues that we see. And it also causes issues for people using the pavement kind of immediately there and then, wheelchairs, pushchairs, and people just trying to get about. And so I'd just like to ask everyone to really think about where they're parking. We can also prove, if we can prove where pavements and roads haven't been repaired appropriately, we can look to go back to some of the suppliers, but we do need those to be reported in. So I just encourage everyone to absolutely report those where they can, and we can respond appropriately.
Thanks, Rich. So I have one more question from Catherine Avery, which is, I would like to know if more specialist schools are being built. the number of children with no school places is only going to increase due to the rise in EHCPs. Many can't attend mainstream schools, so having a satellite provision is not ideal. So when we talk about EHCPs, we're talking education, health and care plans. And these are the plans put in place for children who have maybe special educational needs or additional needs and need to have a bit more support. That might be delivered within their own mainstream setting, or it might be something that is delivered in a special school. But just to reassure you, Catherine, so we have a SEND sufficiency strategy which is in place to try and address this demand for places that we're seeing. We are working already with existing schools, with some of those special schools, to try and create some of those satellite sites which would offer more spaces and reduce the need for transport to really far away places. We have children travelling very far to get to school, so it's trying to address some of those issues as well and make schooling a lot more local for families so that they don't need to go so far. But just saying about mainstream provision, so last year we added a total of 140 places into our schools, and then the previous 2 years before that there were 100. We are awaiting the Department for Education to help us with providing a new special school which will provide about 180 places for children with autism spectrum conditions who are aged between 3 and 18. However, we don't yet have the timing for when that will be delivered. We're waiting for the DFE to confirm it, and when it is announced, of course, we will be letting you know about that. I also just want to say we have a capital project as well underway across different areas in our conurbation that will deliver a further 60 places next year as well. So we do have plans in place to deliver. And you're right, the rising need is something that a lot of councils are struggling to address, but we, as a council, we're doing whatever we can to try and meet that rising need by establishing more places, both in external schools, but also in mainstream schools as well. Okay, so we are now going to open up for questions for me, Rich and Mark. So Mark, I have one here from you, which is from Andrew Coley. He asks, hi Mark, we've tried so many times to get an answer on why we don't have any PCSO in Oakdale. I've asked these questions to where we've now stopped. I've asked this question and now we've stopped asking the question, and that's from Andrew Coley, who is in Oakdale. So I don't know, Marco, could you please give a bit of a response to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew, thanks for the question. So first off, in terms of your neighbourhood team, if you go on the Dorset Police website, you'll be able to see who are your neighbourhood officers on there. We have had some challenges in terms of our numbers of PCSOs. We're currently in the process of recruiting another 6 PCSOs to be deployed across the force, and we'll look at those in terms of where they're deployed, where there's currently gaps, and where there's harm and need in terms of the demand. And Poole obviously is an area that is still a big conurbation area for us. In addition to that, with the government's neighbourhood pledge, we're currently in the process of recruiting more staff, which will enable us to put a number more, up to 40 officers, back into neighbourhood teams. With, again, some of the financial challenges we've had, we have had to put officers into places which aren't on the front line. We're now, with some investment with the neighbourhood pledge, being able to release officers back out. So that work's underway as well. So my encouragement is, if you haven't currently got a PCSO dedicated to your area because we've got gaps there, go on the website. There will be, the wider Poole team will be covering your area. So please do get in touch with me if you've got any queries, etc. Keep an eye on the website, sign up to Dorset Alert, and then you'll be able to get some updates, etc. But it's certainly an area that we're able to invest in now to deal with some of those neighbourhood issues.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm looking at some of the live questions that are coming in. I have one here which is on police and CSAS officers in Poole. It's from Andrew Tame on Facebook. It says there are no police or CSAS officers in Poole when large events are on, or in the evenings or at weekends. Why is this? Sainsbury's and other shops have repeated theft and nothing is done. We need more support from BCP and the police. So I'll start with Mark. Would you like to give a bit of an update on policing in Poole Town Centre? Then we'll talk a little bit about CSAS as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a policing perspective in Poole Town Centre, any events that we have get assessed by our operational contingency planning unit, and they get assessed based on the need to police. We often encourage people doing events to make sure they've got their own security on to manage, just like if you go into a pub or nightclub, etc. They have responsibilities for public safety. It's the event organiser's responsibility. In terms of shoplifting and the wider crime in Poole, we recognise the challenges that we've had nationally with shoplifting, and we've got an operation called Operation Shopkeeper, where we're really focusing on those offences that are being committed. Now, if obviously an offender makes off from a shop, it may well be that we ask the shop to report it, and we have a team that work in our it's basically the IACS investigation and intelligence team that will make contact and progress, focusing on repeat offenders, working with local authority if we've got opportunity around civil orders, trying to understand the cause of the cause. So what's causing them to steal? So can we get them into, if it's addiction related, can we get them into some sort of rehabilitation or take them obviously away from the area using different civil orders, bail conditions, etc. There are definitely neighbourhood police officers in Poole, and there's also response officers, and those officers are there to responding. Poole bus station in particular, I know there's another question about Poole bus station, is an area we know that has had problems in the past, and recently we had a spike in problems, and the neighbourhood team were all over that, identified who the key person was causing those problems, and that's been addressed. So we're constantly monitoring and working with partners to make sure that we understand what the issues are and we can respond to them quickly. But of course, what I'd encourage people to do is, don't put it on WhatsApp groups. Use the single online home, so the Dorset Police website, to report any concerns that you've got, so that we can be aware of them and we can respond to them with our partners through the Community Safety Partnership.
Thank you, Mark. And I would just add to that a little bit around CSAS, unless Rich wants to come in on CSAS specifically.
I can't really add that. That's kind of outside my portfolio, really. But I do know that we dearly value that the work that the CSAS officers do across all of our spaces.
Yeah, and I would just add to that as well. CSAS schemes at the moment, which is our kind of accredited street wardens who are out and about as an authority. I've seen them work really effectively in my community in Ashley Road, actually. However, we now operate CSAS in a way which is responsive to issues that are arising. So if there are particular problems in a particular area, then we allocate our CSAS officers there rather than having them sort of wedded to a particular place, and especially if there aren't any issues there. So yeah, they do a really good job, and I'm really glad we've been able to retain that service, and I'm hoping that in years to come we might be able to continue, well, we'll continue working with the police to deliver kind of that safe authority within our town centres. Right, I have a question here, which is from Hoxton Flat, which is, the Just Don't campaign is great, but why is a council-owned venue hosting abuser Marilyn Manson? What message do you think this sends, Mark? And how will it make women and girls feel? So, Mark, don't worry, I'm not going to throw that one at you, but I am just going to give a response myself. So, obviously, the BIC, the Bournemouth International Centre, is operated and managed by PH Live, but it is owned by the council. Because of our lease arrangement with them, we don't have any input into the decisions that are made or the acts that are appearing, although I have actually written to BH Live to express my concern about Marilyn Manson and the fact that I don't feel Marilyn Manson reflects the values that we have in BCP, and we've been doing a lot of work around things like the White Ribbon accreditation scheme, which helps men and boys change negative and damaging behaviours. We've also just launched a really powerful campaign on tackling everyday harmful behaviours towards women and girls, alongside our colleagues in the Safer BCP partnership. That includes things like, some of those nasty behaviours like catcalling or unwanted comments that women have to suffer. And the idea is for men to and boys to call out each other by saying, just don't. So I have asked that BH Live reconsider hosting Marilyn Manson later this year to try and help reinforce that message that violence against women and girls isn't something that's acceptable in our community. So Mark, I don't know if you want to add to that about some of the police work around protecting women and girls rather than on the specific Marilyn Manson case.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a significant amount of work to do with violence against women and girls, working with our community, but also working with partners on making sure that we are making our streets safe, so people don't feel that they're in any way going to be harmed. So I've already talked about some of that in the nighttime economy, where we run an operation called Operation Vigilant, which is plainclothes officers out, and they're identifying anybody who might be preying on vulnerable persons who may be drunk. We have street pastors out, the safe places for people to go to. So a real focus on making sure that when people are out and about, that we're protecting them. We even on the beach, working with wider partners, RNLI, obviously the beach wardens, etc., really focusing on tactically what there is out there to protect individuals. And of course, if we know that there are potentially areas that we may get offending nature, then again we'll be doing proactive targeting operations in those areas. We're also working through the Children's Safeguarding Partnership, working with lots of education students with the uni and also younger children on education, how people can keep themselves safe and where to go and report issues to us. So there's a whole suite of work that's going on. We've also got an initiative with our special constabularies, which is Jog On, which is focusing on the behaviours towards female joggers as well. That's obviously going to be taking place now and into the future as well, so we can really start to change that societal culture in terms of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable.
Thank you, Mark. And I know this is an issue that often affects women and girls when we're out and about, actually. I see poor behaviour in the town centres, but all over the conurbation, actually. And I think it's really important. I'm really glad to hear that the police are taking this matter really seriously as well. Rich, I just wanted to come back to you.
I'd just like to just add the superb work that the street pastors do in the nighttime economy in Bournemouth. I used to work in the nighttime economy in Bournemouth, and I've been out with them since I've been in this role as well. And I think, just that softer side and that service of people who just need a little bit of looking after, they do some amazing work. An opportunity to pay tribute to them and what they do.
Thank you, Rich. So I have a question here from Amanda Curry. There are many known drug bikes running around BCP. They have known areas as well as move around locations. Are there any plans to manage this? So Mark, could you please answer Amanda's question there, please?
Yeah, so I'm assuming drug bikes is people are using the bikes to distribute drugs. So that's what I'm assuming from that side of things. So first off, what's really, really important is people submit information to us intelligence. So you can do that through the Dorset Police website. You can do it through Crime Stoppers, which means we take bits of the jigsaw of all the information that we have to then start targeting areas. And we have a range of options that we do. So as we get intelligence in, it might be a neighbourhood team officer that does targeting areas. We then might have a more proactive operation, so a larger group of officers come together to tackle those, covert policing opportunities, and up to serious and organised crime, county lines. We have specialist detectives, and we also have tactics and assets that we can use from the regional organised crime unit. So that's the Southwest ROCU. And you'll know every so often we have intensification weeks where we come together as the Southwest region to focus on what's called Operation Scorpion, which is really trying to tackle the wider network of criminality. But certainly locally, if we get information in from people about what the issues are, we will target them and we'll put in interventions interventions in place, but we're only as good as the information that comes in from the public and the communities. So please, whilst we can't reply to every piece of intelligence, your snippets of intelligence make a bigger piece of the jigsaw, so we can identify who's responsible, and then we can target them and make sure that we're searching, detaining, arresting them and getting them before the courts, and then if need be getting civil orders again to keep them out of the area.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark and Rich. And I'm going to move on now to talk about the community governance review, but I really appreciate you both joining me today to answer those questions. And like I said, if any questions haven't been answered, then our officers will be working to respond to those over the next day. So thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rich. I'm now going to invite Richard Jones to join me, who is our Head of Democratic Services here at BCP Council, and we're going to be talking about the Community Governance Review. Now, hi Richard. So I did a Leaders Live a couple of months ago on the Community Governance Review as well as devolution, and just to explain a little bit more about the process and why we wanted to do it. So I'm just going to give a brief overview now, and then we're going to find out a little bit more from a video that we've recorded with Councillor Andy Martin. So the Community Governance Review is really a process where we check local governance structures and look at whether they are appropriate to serve the needs of our communities. The review is currently underway. It invites feedback from residents and organisations. We are looking at some minor changes of parish boundaries. We're also looking at the creation of new town and parish councils and some changes as well to the electoral arrangements within those areas. The review will include those options for the whole of the BCP area. We currently have 5 areas that already have parish councils, including Christchurch Town Council, and this review is really looking at those other areas that don't benefit from that additional governance structure. It really is an opportunity for us to enhance the local democracy that we want to see in the community engagement. I've talked at length about how I feel really passionately about our identity within our own towns. For me, I was born in Poole. I've lived in Poole my whole life. And when the councils were forced to merge together in 2019, for me, that was heartbreaking, because I don't understand why we would have councillors from other areas making decisions on things that solely impact an individual place. So being able to run the community governance review is a way of looking at whether we want to establish town councils or parish councils or not at all. So we have, just to explain a bit more about town and parish councils and what they actually do, we have a video from Councillor Andy Martin. So I'm going to see if we can play that now.
There's been a lot of misinformation about the creation of new parish and town councils. Other than allotments, which must be transferred by law, there will be no transfer of liabilities, functions or services from BCP to any new town or parish council if created. If any new town or parish council is created, then BCP Council will agree an anticipated budget for the first year. If there are any new town and parish councils, such as those that already exist in the borough of Christchurch, they will be funded by a precept, which is an amount of money that is raised in the local community and added to your council tax bill. Now that amount of money is dependent on what the parish or town council wants to deliver for its communities on behalf of its residents. So for example, in Highcliffe, the precept is £32 a year for a Band D property, which is equivalent to, say, 10 coffees in a coffee shop. If they want to, parish and town councils can ask to have some assets transferred to them on behalf of their communities. So that's things like play areas, playing fields, recreation grounds. But that's a matter for the community, and it's also a matter for the parish or town council itself.
Oh, right. So I'm told I'm back. I couldn't actually see the video playing there. So I'm not too sure when it was going to finish. Anyway, it's ended now. So we are going to talk a little bit about the community governance review. I have had some pre-submitted questions on this topic, so we'll have a look at those first and then we'll go to live questions. So the first one is from Steve Hayes on Facebook, and Steve asks, do you believe the consultation on the community governance review meets the 4 legal gunning principles requirement for public consultation? So Richard, can you please explain a little bit more about the gunning principles and whether we meet those within the consultation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Leader. So just a bit of background in terms of what the gunning principles are. They're a set of rules that were established following a legal case back in the 1980s to ensure that consultations are fair and meaningful. There are 4 principles, 3 of which I believe we've already ticked, and the 4th one I will come on to. So I believe we've met gunning principle 1, which is consultation must happen at a formative stage. No decisions have been made yet on the community governance review. We have published draft recommendations, and after the consultation, the findings will be considered by the council's cross-party working group, and then recommendations will be made to cabinet and full council. Gunning principle 2 is about providing sufficient information to give considered responses. And again, we have published a huge amount of information on our website, including the publishing of videos. We have a 57-page information document that explains the proposals. The document provides examples of town and parish council responsibilities and examples of potential charges, or the average charges that we've got, including a list of all of the existing charges within the BCP area and the averages across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole and Dorset. We've provided an email address for anyone to, dedicated email address for anyone to ask questions on the review, and again we've been responding to those. Gunning principle 3 is about providing adequate time for respondents, and again the consultation started on the 31st of March, runs out on this Sunday, 22nd of June at 23:59, which is a 12-week period, and again in line with the gunning principles. The final principle is yet to come, which is around consciously taking into account the findings and output of consultation, and again the consultation findings will be considered and taken into account fully and debated through the decision-making process of the Task and Finish Group, Cabinet and Council.
Thank you, Richard. I feel like there's a lot more for residents to consider in this consultation, considering that it is quite broad. It looks at all different areas across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. So I really encourage people to go and complete the consultation with their thoughts. That will then feed into the working group. The working group will then have its findings scrutinised. Then it will come to cabinet and then on to full council. So we have lots of stages within the democratic decision-making process to look closer at those outcomes. So the next question that I have got here is one from Leo Belchum. And Leo has asked, where would the proposed Poole Town Council meet? Could it use the vacant civic centre? So thank you, Leo, for that question. I think that, yes, it could use the current civic centre. However, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the civic centre. So it's currently up for sale because as a council, we're spending £19,000 a month on its security, on making sure that it was maintained properly and making sure that it was insured. So that's a lot of money to spend on a building that is empty. We actually have a paper coming to council soon with the options for sale of the building, and I'm sure councillors will factor in the use of the civic centre as a space for the town or parish council to meet into their decision. But of course, we do still need to make the decision on town and parish councils as well. Just to reassure you, the civic centre in Poole, the historic areas of it are listed. Any changes to those will need to have planning consent. My view is that town council could actually meet in anywhere. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to meet within the civic centre, but you could use the Guildhall, or it could come out to communities to meet, maybe in community centres. That would certainly save a level of cost to a proposed town or parish council, but of course that would be up to residents. If residents wanted to elect councillors who were going to pay to maintain the areas of the civic centre for town council purposes, then that would be up to them rather than up to me. So we have some other questions which have been submitted on the town and parish council issue and the community governance review. I have one here from Mark White. Oh, hello, Mark, who has directly messaged this one into the council. It says, why does this administration only listen to the minority? I've spoken to hundreds of people who are worried about the undisclosed costs, and I really don't want this. So thank you, Mark, for your question. I would just provide a little bit of clarity around the costs of town and parish councils. It is entirely up to those elected to those town and parish councils to decide on a budget, and then the budget will inform a precept. And just to give you a little bit of background information to that, for example, in BCP, we have Christchurch Town Council who deliver all of the civic and mayoral side of things. They also deliver lots of community events. They look after some of their parks and the splash parks and things like that. Whereas in Poole and Bournemouth, we don't have that coverage of a town council. What we have instead to retain the mayoralties are charter trustees. So in Poole, this is a 77-year-old mayoralty that is looked after by the charter trustees. The charter trustees actually levy a council tax charge, which is £2.15 for a bandy household. So that raises about £132,000 a year for the charter trustees. Problem is the charter trustees can't spend that on anything other than the mayoralty. But actually, if you took that precept and then applied it to a town council, then that's £132,000 more a year that could be spent on things within Poole. And of course, it's the same for Bournemouth with their charter trustees. And that could be on all sorts of things, whether that is promoting or protecting the civic traditions, and but it could also be things like community initiatives or some of the things that we've lost over the years to cuts to local governments due to austerity. Just in terms of addressing whether they are undisclosed, that's something that we can't decide as a town council, as a principal authority ourselves. It will be up to those elected to the council to do. So I can't provide any speculation on that, but you're very welcome to go and have a look at firstly what the charter trustees charge and what they spend on in their areas, or you could go and have a look at some of the existing town and parish councils and see what they are delivering. And in fact, I think you'll find that a lot of those things are things that we used to have in Bournemouth and Poole, but that have disappeared. Okay, so I'm going to go back to some of our live questions and see what we have had come in. I've had one from Jude. I've had one from a councillor, but I'd rather keep this for residents who have questions, because councillors, of course, have had the opportunity to engage in this in lots of different ways, because it has been through the democratic process already. I have got one here from, hang on, let's just find one on the community governance review. Gosh, there are lots and lots of responses coming in, and lots of questions coming in. But I just want to find one which are questions and not comments, because a lot of people are responding with their opinions, whereas then it becomes a little bit difficult to actually discover the questions within it. So my next one, here we go, from Keith Mail on Facebook. So will Cllr Earl and the Three Towns Alliance respect the results of the Town Council's consultation if it's a no? After all, she told us at time and time again, consultations are not binding and they don't have to follow them. So Keith, just to explain the democratic process to you, we have elections every 4 years in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole to elect councillors who then represent us on Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. They're the ones who make decisions, particularly on the strategic issues that cover the 3 towns. The idea of creating town and parish councils is to try and give and push some of that decision making down from BCP Council into those local communities. So particularly on things such as, you know, what happens to a local community centre, or whether we could be planting more, you know, wild meadows, as we saw other councils are doing in specific places where communities want them, then it allows for a mechanism for that to happen, rather than BCP Council that is currently under a lot of financial pressure due to the rise of need in our statutory services such as adult social care and children's services. It means that those communities can then actually shape their own futures in many ways. The consultation is for us to understand more about the community views on this. You're absolutely right. They're consultations, they are not referendums, and it is the democratic right of those who are elected to deliver their mandate. And as Lib Dems, we campaigned quite a lot on delivering community and town councils to our neighbourhoods that have been missing out. So we have to balance that against the consultation responses. We also have to balance it against the residents who contact us individually about these issues. And we also have to balance it against the debate within our council, what other councillors might want to bring to the table. So the consultation plays an important part in the decision making, but is not the only part of our decision making. So I just wanted to give you a bit of reassurance that we would be looking at the much wider picture of town councils. Okay, so I have a question from Leo, which is, what services would you prioritise to hand over to Poole Town Council, and what each would cost in terms of a Band D precept? So, hello, Leo. It wouldn't be up to me to hand services over to Poole Town Council. It would be up to a town council to ask for particular assets, particular services that it would want to deliver. Now, we're not talking about the statutory services that BCP Council deliver, things like collecting bins, keeping our grass cut, that kind of thing. The base level of service will still remain. What a town council can do is deliver services above and beyond. I mean, we may have a town council that doesn't actually want to deliver any additional services, but instead wants to be that statutory voice on planning and spend things like our community infrastructure levy, which is millions of pounds that we get to spend in BCP Council, but I would much rather be spent by residents of the communities that it impacts. But when it comes to our town councils, it will be up to them to decide what they want to take on. Something that I've been championing a lot is community asset transfer, and that is handing over some of our really valued assets to community councils. For example, things like community centres. We know that town councils can apply for grants where principal authorities like ours, we can't apply for grants for things like rebuilding community centres. And I think that actually communities are really well placed to decide what they want those community centres to deliver. Some things that we have lost over the last few years, last 15 years of local government cuts by previous administrations and by the austerity that's been imposed on local government, are things like our youth services. So we used to have lots of thriving youth clubs around, but they've been chipped away at because of those cuts. And we also have things like something I always miss is Christmas lights along our high streets. Those are something which we don't see anymore. BCP Council can't afford to fund them in the district areas and only in the town centres. But actually, that might be something that a town council would want to use some money to be able to deliver. Right, thank you. I'm going to have a quick... Oh, I've been told that we are now at, it's time to wrap up. And this is the last question that I'm going to be answering on this. However, like I said, our team will be answering questions throughout the afternoon if you have those that have been asked, if you have those that you've asked, but they haven't yet been answered via the Leaders Live. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful summer here in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, and enjoy our beaches safely. I would encourage you to go and look at some of the information that we post online around staying safe in the summer, particularly around things like water safety and using the beaches in a safe way. Obviously, our staff are around on our beaches. We also have our staff out in the town centre. And I would also just say as well to residents to think about completing the community governance review consultation and have that opportunity to feed in your views into the discussion. So thank you, Richard, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.